Welcome, everybody, to the very first full hour showing of the keys to AWS Optimization. We are super happy to be here for an hour. It's going to be exciting. This is going to be the new start to the show, and I have the lovely Frank with me. Frank, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Good. I'm glad. It's going to be a fun episode. We've got lots to talk about. We'll be having conversations on pricing information, as well as doing our big section later, which will do FinOps fundamentals with Savanna. And for that, we'll be deciding at the time what we're going to do. We have a few ideas. We're going to be chatting through some bits, and we will see how it goes. I'm just going to make sure. Yep. Okay. Just double checking that we are all live and good to go. So, Frank, as our kind of cold open, when we were on the phone the other day,
Yes.
you started telling me a story, and I was like, no, tell me on the show. And I'm just going to say the word island. Just give us a
Yes.
little intro on you and this island you want to talk about.
Yes. So, well, usually that's how I say it's the most interesting bit of me. The thing that gets me the more question after, you do those talks about FinOps and thing. But at the intro, I always say that, effectively, my wife and I, at one point, we've decided to both resign and we went to a tropical island for 1 year. So we did a 1 year holiday. We had a kid at the time. We came back with two. And it was very funny because most of the time, that's what people ask you at the end. They say, oh, I really like this point. And you say, yeah, that was 2 minutes at the beginning.
The one thing that you're like, oh, it's the guy who lived on an island. Like, I feel like
Yes.
that's the fun thing to remember about someone. I feel like mine is I'm the girl who loves like M&M based products. So it's just sitting in the background now. So that's my my vibe. Anyone wants to bring me M&Ms? Let me know. Always down for that.
I should send that to every guest. Come on.
Oh, the post alone. I was originally like, maybe we should have t-shirts made. It was just like the delivery and GDPR was like, it's too much. But anyway, right, let's get into the show. So welcome everyone to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your spend at AWS. My name is Steph Gooch, and I'm a senior optimization architect, bringing you content like this to help you save money and generally do FinOps at AWS. Today, we're going to be talking about pricing, specifically about looking and visualizing pricing. Frank has made an awesome tool that we're going to be demoing that you can use. It's open source. And then afterwards, we're going to be doing a bit about the probably the state of FinOps / some pricing information. So as we said at the start, this is going to be an hour show moving forward. So we have lots of great content, and then we'll go into some announcements. Savanna and I will talk a bit about that later. But Frank, do you want to give us your 1 minute origin story of what you do apart from living on islands?
Well, yeah, I'm not. Well, I'm on an island still. It's a Great Britain island, but yeah, it's slightly different. That's my minute of glory. So I am Franck Contrepois. I am Chief Innovation Officer at Strategic Blue, which is a company I really enjoy because we focus on pricing, cloud pricing, and it was IT was not complex enough. I wanted to add some mechs into it, and pricing definitely does the trick. I'm also on the FinOps Foundation. I'm one of the, I think 100 now FinOps pros. And I was happy to be selected to be one of the AWS ambassadors too. So that's my minute of glory. So on top of the island, which you probably want to talk about, unfortunately, I will go to pricing now.
Yes. So let's get into, like we said at the start, this is about your pricing tool that you've made.
Yes.
Let's give a bit of background about maybe why you made this and
Yes.
what it does.
So there are really, what we're going to see are really two tools that I've created that are all based on AWS pricing. And it all starts because I think it's an instinct. Curiosity is an instinct. And it helps me understand always more, to go just behind what people or companies are presenting to you. In this case, with the pricing, what can you understand on top of what just is the pricing of an instance? Are there strange things happening? And if you see strange behaviors, and graphs are perfect to show you those kind of changes of behavior, what can you find as an hypothesis or testing thing? So it's all really based on curiosity to start with. It's part of what I do. Also, let's say, as a living, it helps me understand. And as innovation, part of my job is to make sure that I go into I'm not surprised by change. So the more I understand ahead of time, hopefully with kind of pricing being one of the big things for me, I managed to better understand how things work. And
Yeah.
so I created tools around this. One is, I will show you, but yeah, any questions, Steph? Because I just
Yeah. Well, so
blurbed.
let's before we demo it, just to highlight the pricing element, I think is a really good point. Like giving you more information so that when you make decisions up front, and that's where a lot of this comes from, right? Is making sure that you know what's going on with the pricing
Yes.
information. So when you decide to deploy in a certain region or with a certain instance type, you should understand what will happen in your cost explorer or your CURT and then in your bill, so that you
Exactly.
can not make any surprises. Just before we move into the demo, just some shout outs. Steph is Eminem #1 fan. Just as a funny anecdote on Eminem, just saying, I just got an email saying Eminem Amia, and I got really excited for a brief second before I realized that it was modernization and migration. I just was like, not that kind of Eminem.
Oh gosh. Why did they disappear?
I don't know. They went. I think you did that. I was like,
I did that.
It was like God voice. Thanks for the comments. Keys optimization double feature. Excited for the hour. Thank you so much. What is happening? And then where's the other one? Love the new time slot. So thank you, Connor. Awesome. Oh, this tool will help. We've got a question. I got a question off the bat. This tool will be helpful for migrating on-premise to AWS. Frank, will this tool be helpful for helping people migrate?
Well, yes and no, but there is always work to do. Okay, when you try to migration, it's not and you do pricing to understand, so there will be work for you. I hope it's going to help. I hope it can be used. If you have an idea of where you move, I'm going to start with a presentation just after this, showing, for example, some strange thing when you go to GovCloud, or some strange pricing around GovCloud. So that was quite interesting. So depending on where you go, you will be able to see with the kind of tools and eventually creating your own or extracting the graphs that I've used and putting your own data, you will be able to better understand. Now, is that going to help really full helping?
I think it's good to give you this person, yes, because at least you'll understand where you should migrate to.
Yes. I love your optimism.
All right, and one last question before we demo. Great topic, Frank. Did you build this AWS pricing tool? So did you build it? I think the answer is yes.
Yes, the answer is yes. It's mostly, you're going to see there is one which is a website, and that website is based on Hugo, so it is a completely static website. The graphs are generated from me extracting data using AWS technology at the back end, and then analyzing it. And there is a second tool that we'll see slightly later, which is called Observable. That is a way to present graphs, so to do research on graph in a very nice way. So I'm using that, but then again, all the code I created is completely available there.
Amazing. Good plug for that. Right. Do you want to bring up your share screen?
Yes.
And as a reminder, while he's doing that, if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. Or if you're watching us on demand, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, any of those, then please feel free to comment, like, and subscribe as always. Right. Let's bring up this share screen. So
can you see the screen?
Yes. In this demo, you're going to be showing us about the tool that you have made and what kind of data it showcases.
So the first, yes, the idea in this case is I've started with the difference between regions, between services of AWS services and instances. And for each one of them, I've tried to find some interesting statistics and graphs. So the first one, for example, very, very simple. The title, it goes through everything. Those are all the regions, and it shows you the price of something that is always available, which is S3 standard first gig. Okay, so I needed to find something that was available everywhere. And you can see that most regions are roughly in the same price range, but with 3 outliers, which is US Gov and Sao Paulo. And you'll discover that Sao Paulo is almost always the very costly one. And I did the same for T3 micros because they are roughly the same. They are also available in all regions and something that people will use. And so you can see how, in this case, the graph is slightly different. So there is no direct correlation. It's not that S3 is priced in exactly the same way as VMs, for example. So that was one of the things I've seen. And we've said about Gov Cloud, I found it very interesting, and I'm going to also present a new hypothesis, that it is at
Mhm.
the top for cost for S3, but it's in the middle for running T3.
Ah,
So
interesting. So it's not always, you can't always assume it would be maybe a higher price in comparison. Interesting.
exactly, that they would be ordered in the same way. And what I think this is the part that I find interesting is you start building hypotheses and you say, okay, if I am in a region which is specific to for saving data, which is government data, that's the most important bit. Probably all the investment and need for security and compliance is on the data, not on how you run a VM. And so
And
AWS pass that discount back to the government, say, hey, VMs, we don't need to do much work there, just normal price. Data, sorry, but yeah, FedRAMP is expensive.
interesting. I just realized I made the same noise as this person. No, I'm glad that we're all learning. Thank you for the comments. Okay, continue.
So then I went to, well, the one it is interesting is number of service per region. And so there is always an assumption that US East 1, at least for me, has everything. And you can see that it is by far, yes, 209 services. And this is data from the 1st of February, because the data is re-updated every month. But then you look at this graph, which I'm not ordering. We discussed it on the previously. I love the Space Invader style.
Yeah. I'm just seeing faces in it now. It's the brain thing of like what's that ink block test kind of vibe that it's producing.
Exactly. And but then you find the outliers and you say, what is this? And you say, oh, Deep Racer is only in US East 1. But you see that there is something that is not in US East 1. What's that? And so it's Device Farm, which is US West 2. So these kind of graphs, that's again, it helps me find things, find outliers. The graph, using graphs really help understanding better. And if you go on those graphs, if you click on this website, so the website is aws.franccontrepois.com, very megalomaniac, you can go and get everything. You can even you can see the source of this graph, which is just a JSON document that uses an open source library called VegaLite to represent things. You can even go to an editor, which is in Vega. I'm not going to do it now, but you can go into that editor and change things. If you want to see it organized differently, if you manage to put a bigger font, let me know. I'm still struggling with that. But overall, that was one of the things. And the other you will see, other graph that I did, which is very interesting quite often, is which region has which instance type.
Oh yeah.
And that's another one which was, it's I have also a podcast, What's New in Cloud FinOps. And part of
Don't
this
worry,
is
we'll touch about that later, guys. Don't worry. We can tell you how to get more Frank, because Frank getting some love in the comments, which I'll show in a sec.
And you will see that, and we have all those new. We look at the news, and you have we have this released in 3 new version, in this instance type released in 3 new regions, and you have a look at that. And so that's where I check things happening, and I have an understanding. Again, you can see the outliers. So that is everything looking from the region's point of view. I've done the same for.
Oh, Frank, before you move
yes?
on,
Yes.
question: how often is this data refreshed?
Monthly for now. So every month, download all the AWS data, all the best pricing data, do some analysis just to limit the size. I don't want to
Ooh.
be.
Do you know
Get
what
it
would
out.
be while you say that?
Yes.
Let's just do a quick poll, because I want to know who has actually tried to download and open the EC2 pricing data. Because that thing is almost like Kerr-like with the size of it. It's huge.
Yes.
So 1 in the chat for yes, 2 in the chat for no. Some people have like it just as a warning. Like, you could try, but the index file is huge, and I think it's definitely crashed my laptop before. So advertising Frank's tool even more, so you don't have to deal with the EC2 pricing, is definitely a big thing.
Yeah. And recently, and I'm going to show it, I've done a research on the last 5 years, and I think that file grew in the last 5 years something like 10 times.
Wow,
The size
really?
is
Right,
yes.
keep going. Because one thing we did talk about was looking about somebody asking the question of like, has Amazon pricing gone up? That was something we spoke
Yes.
about, wasn't it?
So I'm going to just finish fast this so that people can have a
Oh, yeah, so keep going.
have an idea. So this is services and region. We explain the stuff, but then you can just go and see where one service is running. So if you want to know where you're going to get your, I don't know, Cognito, here we go. It's almost everywhere. So that was mostly the only graph done for services, but there are many. And instances is quite an interesting one. So those are all the instances on Linux. So all their prices, etc., and region. But if you select one thing, it will show you the different generations and the price for each region of that specific generation. So quite often you will see that there are blocks. For example, in this case, the D3EN is cheaper in those two regions, quite noticeably cheaper than this block, etc. So as usual, you can go there, have a look, have an understanding the instances you're using, where are they based, and what are the best regions for them, etc., and how this is evolving. Potentially, you can understand that the D2 was way more expensive than the D3, for example. Quite nice. So yeah, that's the elaboration, and I use all the data that that I generate for this website is also then used in the new one I'm going to show you. So the data, this website behind are also all the data, and it's all in S3 static website. This is the one you were talking about. So let me see. So this is a tool which is so yeah, it's free. It's based on Plot, which is an open source library. The website is called Observable. They're also the makers of D3, which is a very well-known 3D graph for JavaScript library. And in this case, they've created something like the library or the notebooks for Python. So you can just write stuff. You can just write stuff in here, but then you can do their specialized library to do elaboration of data. So in this case, you see I have the data from 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, and I'm all putting them all in one big block. That's the idea. And then I'm elaborating that data, and you can see everything. So all the code is always available. Just open and you get the code.
Handy.
So you can see it, and in the same way, you can see the graphs. So underneath, that's how I generated this graph. But the graph in this case was quite interesting, was to say, okay, I'm going to see all 2x large. So I've said like every instance type, 2x large in US East 1, and see how the price has evolved. So you can see some instances just like, I don't remember how you call this one, trainer 1, but some have just appeared recently.
Just magically appeared new instances.
Yay! But you can see that everything's just flat except for one.
What's the one that goes down?
That's exactly the question I was having. And so I did a tool which is called normalize. It's put everyone at 0 at the same level. Everyone's there, but the only one moving is the inf1. It's inference 1, which is quite new. It seems to have dropped by quite a lot.
Yeah, but to answer the question, AWS pricing stationary. So anybody that's thinking that it's going up, the data, Frank has shown the data. Also, we got a question for you, Frank.
Yes.
Can metrics in the graphs be modified by a certain timestamp, like a view 1 day, 1 week kind of statistic? I assume for either this one or in the other website.
So no, repeat the question, sorry.
Can you do it per day, per week, per month for all of your data?
In theory. So yes. So the data, this is pricing data. So it doesn't change per week. It's not usage data. It's not your usage data. This is pricing data. So usually it changes once a month, roughly, which is why I collected once a month too. So I have a monthly granularity to it. So I'm not sure, but if it was your usage and you were using this tool, yes, you could use whatever you want.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
If I wanted to have every single change of data, which seems to be right, I would have to download. It's possible. There is an index. So when you download the stuff, as Steph said, you have an index. You have all the possible combination, and you can start downloading quantities. This was a fast fast analysis. So this took me a couple of hours, 1 or 2 hours, because at reInvent, someone was saying, "Oh yeah, prices increased." And I say, "I don't believe so, but let me make sure." And
Sure, I guess
so,
haters. John has provided the infra is accelerated compute for ML. And if you want to learn anything else about it, you can check out the URL just there.
here we go. And it's cheaper than before.
Love it.
But one thing which was very interesting, and I keep it approximate, but it gives you a good enough. For example, is from the data, what I really like with AWS is that they really pass you exactly. They don't do markup for lots of things, including in this case license costs. So, for example, I was able to. I was trying to understand how much is a Windows license. How much do we pay for a Windows license? And so it explains it all there. I'm not going to go into the detail, but a Windows license is the VM price of a Windows VM minus the Linux VM price. And that's what I've tried to see if that makes sense. It's a very simple equation.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to start doing that, and you end up effectively seeing that everything, like 90 something percent, end up here. And remember that all those numbers are usually 12 decimals. And so there are some approximation errors. But as usual, I was also interested in what is that stuff? What is the small bit there? And so you can read it. We can go into the detail. The interesting thing was that, if I remember well, the T2, for example, the T2 and T3, which have different change, the cost of the Windows license will change depending on if they have credit or not, or how the CPU is used. But for everything else, there is only one price for Windows license all over the place, which is $0.045 an hour, I think.
I love how specific. Like it's 0. This is my kind of number where it's like that will be in your head forever. Like you just remember this specific pricing.
Yes, and it's for all regions. It's for absolutely everything. And so overall, it helps understand if you have multiple options. For example, we talked about a migration before. Do you move your licenses or not? Might also depend on, is it worth it? Because on the other side, if you want to move your license, you need to make a metal. You need so anyway. So I did some research like this. I did for Windows. I did for Red Hat. I did for SQL Server. And at the beginning, you have the summary of my discoveries. But yeah, I always try to make it. Yeah, this one is lots of nice graphs, but complicated. But yeah, overall, this is what I'm trying to convey and to explain, and to hopefully people can fork this code, create their own book, or add some comments to it, or tell me what they'd like to see, because I'd love to have more.
Yeah, that's a great shout. Like everyone watching, please go and kind of have a look at the code. I think there's some people like John is watching who I think is going to be probably looking at this now, because he's got his brain like, oh my God, the power of pricing data. This is what we can do with it. He's super excited. I can feel it. John's like, lol. I know you so well, John. But yeah, okay. Anything else on this before we can touch on our next little topic?
Well, no, just this one. I love this graph. I don't know why exactly. So if you see 1 point, it means that the price per vCPU is the same for all sizes. So that's one other good thing with AWS is you do to a double X large, it's going to cost double than an X large, or 4, it's going to be, and it's always consistent. Except for some of them, and you can see them here, the G family, it's because they are using the price is also influenced by the GPUs. Or the storage one, I will also usually have the HPC will have different pricing. So, as I say, you see the anomalies, and then it's possible to think it helps drive the thinking to get to probably the right answer.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. So those are the two kind of tools I did build. Very happy to share. Very happy there are others, and feedback's welcome as usual.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing them. I mean, in the chat, there's things like awesome, smart Frank. This is nice. We've got even this is beautiful. Love it. This is so sweet. You got some big fans out there, which is a good segue into how can people get more time with Frank, because you have a podcast.
Yes. So if the French accent is something you like, and the Northern England accent is also, because I have a podcast which is What's New in Cloud FinOps. Yeah, there we go. And there is also, yes, so what's new in Cloud FinOps? It is with Stephen Old, which is an ex-colleague and now a really, really good friend. And we go every month, we go through the news, which are going to impact your invoice. And we also go, so we ignore everything which is purely technical. We just care about the stuff that is, hey, this has changed price, or this is an improvement with your billing. And the other one, we also once a month, we do interviews, which is really cool with people in the FinOps. Like, yeah, we did one with Steph, which I highly recommend. So that was
yeah, go check that one out.
Go and check that one out. Find it out. Whoever is replying here.
Yeah, they got your fans. And like, it's a great podcast. You guys are really good fun. Also, Stephen Old, his actual name is Old. It's not like a nickname, just to clarify.
Yes.
But yeah, they go for all the announcements. Also, if you're a multi-cloud, they cover multi-cloud. So just to throw out some exciting information. Frank, have you seen any good trends or exciting announcements recently that you're like, that's been really cool?
Well, the big one, which is really cool, I would say, from the FinOps Foundation is the focus group. So the fact that there is a standardization. So the fact that there is a standardization around billing pricing is something that I'm reasonably sure every vendor has done to work in their own tools. But what is interesting is that all of a sudden we've seen this approved, or better, supported by companies like cloud vendors, in particular AWS. And then you talk with the people at AWS and they tell you that, yeah, there is this new curve file, this data export, which will allow you to create a focus compatible curve file in a much easier way because it's based on SQL. And you're there. You see real action behind it. Okay, it's not just, yes, we support this brilliant initiative. Nice, done. It was
and then that's it. It was like, yeah, good for you guys. No, we're actually putting some work in. Yeah, that's
putting
that's
work and other cloud vendors, not going to name, but they are also doing the same. So it's really good to see, because for us, people working with pricing and people doing migration and everything, they want to be able to understand how things are working in different places. So no, I think it's brilliant. Every tool you build based on focus is multi-cloud, which is not too bad. But and then you can really compare things. So yeah, so focus is by far the best thing I've noticed. There is also lots of new pros. So FinOps pros in particular. So there is a certification, which it is quite an interesting one. Probably the longest one.
Yeah, we spoke about it at length on the boat at the FinOps X. On the whatever that thing, the air hanger, and I was all like hyped up to do it, and then I need to just spend some time sorting it out, and then but yeah, again, like, recommend doing the exams. They're really good ways to learn. Okay, all right, so let's bring up Richard. Do you want to share your screen of our summary points? As always, Richard has been listening and comes up with a summary, which I will read without knowing what he's saying. So it's always a fun, exciting a summary of what we've been talking about. Number one, simple overview for instances per region. Exactly, great way to look at stuff. Less stress, more success versus dealing with EC2 pricing file. 100% agree. If you don't believe me, go look for the pricing file and try and open it. AWS price, yeah, exactly. AWS price is not going up. Frank has spoken. He has shown us that this is the way forward. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. I thank everyone in the chat. But don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We've still got a bunch more content to go. Frank, thank you so much for coming on. And we will transition now to our new segment, which is FinOps Fundamentals. See you in a sec. How smooth that was. I'm very proud of myself. Savanna, how's it going?
It is going well. I am in an office. I just did a very quick lightning readout of the FinOps, State of FinOps data that was just published, and I put together the quickest PowerPoint I think I've ever made in my life. So
doing well.
We're ready to go. We can look at the FinOps Foundation website, or I can pull it up if you would prefer.
Yeah. So before we do that, let's just jump into a quick. So out of curiosity, guys, in the chat, who knows about the state of FinOps? So 1 for yes, 2 for no. Who knows what this is? Who's done it before, seen it before? No, got some no's in there. So we'll cover what it is in a little bit, but this was just announced as in 30 minutes ago. So it was released when we started streaming. So it's breaking news. So we'll be going through that, looking at this. Whilst that's, thank you. Oh, so a real mixed bag, half and half. So maybe we can kind of summarize what the FinOps state of FinOps survey is. Just before we do as well, I have a little announcement call out that I want for everybody listening. So this is very specific. Savanna doesn't know I'm talking about.
Oh, no.
We want to hear from more customers. So something that we're going to do is we want to make sure that we give your opinions, your voices directly to product owners. So I'm actually asking everybody as an initiative to raise more product feature requests. So these are things that you raise for suggestions for what you want to change in an account. So for example, account names being in the kern might be a good example, which is now in data export in Kern 2.0. So we do listen and we do raise stuff. And recently we've seen that customers maybe think, that's just the way it is. I don't need to raise it because it's never going to happen. Don't believe it. So what I want everyone to do, and I have specific ones, is if you care about this, and only if you care about this, if you care about getting organizational unit data in Cost Explorer, then go to your account, go to your support and raise a feature request, or speak to your account team and ask them to raise this for you. And please use this kind of name, and also tell them that you saw it on this show, that you saw it here now and people were excited about it. I'm not making any promises, but we want to see if you guys can provide some feedback on why we should do this, because I think this is a good idea. I don't know about you, Savanna, if you think this is something that customers should have.
Awesome. Absolutely.
So,
yeah, and
that was
when sorry,
no, you
when you I'm all thrown off with this new hour-long slot. When you do raise those support cases, make sure it's a billing support case. Remember to provide your company name, your title as appropriate, and you can either say product feature request or PFR in the support case. Same thing goes for reaching out to any of the AWS staff who support you directly, that if it is in a support case, just make sure that it's super clear kind of what you're asking for and where to add that PFR for our support staff.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks for indulging me there, everybody. Let's get back to our regular programming, which is all about the state of FinOps survey. So when you were reviewing it, do you want to do a good summary of what this is, Savanna?
Yeah, absolutely. So the state of FinOps is something that the FinOps Foundation does every year, and it is basically a big survey that goes out in, I believe, December, and folks from all over the community kind of chime in, share their experiences, share their top priorities, and then the FinOps Foundation collates all that data and kind of draws conclusions from it and publishes it and makes it available for everybody to look at and use. In my daily life, I find it really helpful, especially when I'm kind of working with newer customers who are just getting started, to talk about kind of how to look around corners and to share some of the hurdles that other customers are getting over. It's also, I found, really helpful to help people not feel as alone if they're having a specific struggle, because they can kind of look at the data and say, okay, this is a very common thing that people run into. Maybe I can reach out to my peers through the FinOps Foundation and kind of get some hints on how other people have solved this. So overall, really interesting data set. They do an amazing job making sure that everything is presented really clearly and pulling some really interesting pieces out of kind of the data that they do collect.
Yeah, I love the idea of sharing it with other customers. I mean, like, it's not just you, it's all of us. I had the High School Musical, we're all in this together for a second in my head. So that, I think that's a great call out. And for us as content creators, I think it's also interesting. I use that a lot to figure out kind of what are interesting things that are happening in FinOps worlds and how we could create some information or go and seek out some new learnings to share with people. So I think it'd be really cool for us to dive into this. So do you want me to share my screen, or do you want to do it?
If you can, or I'm not sure if Richard, you've got a copy of it. It's not my prettiest PowerPoint ever, because I pulled it together in about 30 minutes since this got published right at the top of the hour. So we can definitely take a look at it. But I pulled out a couple things that I thought were a little bit interesting and surprising that we could talk about, and then a couple other kind of data points that I thought were expected, like definitely expected to see them, but we can still kind of chat about what that looks like for folks.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, so the number one thing that jumped out to me with the first read through and kind of the first peruse was the fact that it seems like a lot of folks are flagging that they're kind of getting that optimization of compute spend under control, getting their hands around that a little bit, but haven't always kind of gone outside of the compute realm so far. I think, I don't know if this is consistent with your experience, Steph, but I would say in the last probably year to 2 years, I've seen my customers definitely get that RI savings plan strategy kind of dialed in and move on to other services, whether it be kind of the low-hanging fruit in S3, EBS, et cetera, and really kind of hone in on some of those more, I guess, technically deep optimization opportunities. So it's interesting to see that maybe some of those folks are ahead of the curve here. This is something that kind of the broader ecosystem is looking at. What's your experience like there?
Yeah, I think you're right that most customers are getting to grips with commitments now regularly and are doing it in a more organized format. And so they're looking for kind of how to optimize the resources they use. I think that is right. Because if you think back to RIs and savings plans have been around for a long time now. And so it's kind of like good to see that people are like, we don't really need to talk about that as much. Like even evidenced by this show, I think we've only covered it twice. So we're kind of expecting that most people are kind of aware of this. But people in the chat, let us know. Do you still getting to grips with savings plans? All right. Do you want more content on it? Or are you kind of looking into the more optimization stuff, see if the foundation's right? But what was the next one?
It kind of ties into the first one a little bit, and I'd be interested to get your kind of perspective on it too. But it seems like based on their data engineering personas are getting the most value out of the training and self-service reporting that the FinOps Foundation puts out. And I assume that is kind of some of the self-service, teach yourself how to fish, kind of training and learning paths that are on the FinOps Foundation's website, which are all excellent. And some of that self-service reporting is likely kind of cloud reporting, either Cost Explorer, AWS tooling, or kind of similar for other vendors. So I'm wondering, since it seems like the engineers are getting their feet a little bit more wet, if that is going to kind of compound with the non-compute spend optimization, and if we're going to see kind of more of the engineering staff leaning in and taking a lead role in some of those optimization activities for the other services. That's pure speculation. So tell me if I'm crazy.
I mean, let's dive into that one a little bit. So engineering percent is getting more value from FinOps. So I'm going to bring us back into the frame. We'll touch back on the last one in a sec. But no, I really agree. That's an interesting way that things are like the shift left concept, isn't it? That's happening. And there's more tools in general that are leaning towards developers getting more access to data. But also like the reporting, I think is right. If we think of things like Kudos, shout out CIDs, then things like row level security in there, or creating dashboards so easily and effectively and quickly, it just means that more people can see it. Also, just going to say, if you do want more of this, raise that PRFAQ. I thought this might make even more developers look at data because it's put by OU. That's one of the things I've seen is that OUs like breaking it up into groups would be good. But yeah, I think that's an interesting transition, that because last year it was getting developers to take action was the biggest challenge.
Now they're taking action, hopefully.
Or
at least they're leaning in a little bit, which is exciting.
Yeah, and it's like moving the dial a little bit. Just in general, I don't know about you, but I'm having more conversations with developers. Are you doing that more when you're on the ground with customers?
Yeah, I would say so. It depends a little bit on the situation. I would say the business units that are starting to really experiment more with AWS post-migration, when they're in a situation where they can now play around and build natively, a lot of them are really leaning in a lot more. I would say during that transition period, sometimes there's a little bit of a resistance to really upskill significantly on the cost part of the equation, because it's not really the top priority when you're lift and shifting. You're just trying to get everything out of that data center. But as kind of that maturity increases, you definitely see a little bit more kind of engagement there. And I would say a lot of the way that we've structured some of our tooling now helps with that a lot. Like if you think about Compute Optimizer, the fact that Trusted Advisor kind of links out to a lot of the tools and uses a very similar engine to all of the like cost reporting tools, really helps out with that. It's not just that kind of billing suite that only lives behind the billing console wall, right? We've got the unified cost management console, we've got cost optimization hub now, and it's really kind of letting more folks get involved. At least that's what I see.
Yeah. It's pushing that data in front of people's faces, not in an overstepping way, but kind of giving people access. And also, I always bring this up with Compute Optimizer, things like the CloudWatch metrics being right there. So if you think about transition over time of when we first started to release things like right sizing recommendations or trusted advisor recommendations, they just seem to be like a number or a suggestion that there wasn't backed up by as much data. And now it's definitely like, here are the facts, here's the information, here are the steps that you can kind of take to kind of continue with it.
All the new improvements that they launched during reInvent, I feel like are really supercharging that direction as well. Like if you think about the ability to select certain instance families and instance types that are output in that recommendation. If you have a dev team that's only tested on a certain instance type or is very committed to a certain instance type, you can customize those outputs to make it really kind of tailored made to what exactly you're doing. Additionally, I think kind of the adjustments with headroom and the thresholds can help people get engaged and get the wheels turning a little bit more in an engineering perspective, because you can see kind of in like a very user-friendly graph, what does this actually mean when we're triggering on a certain CPU? If I adjust it, dial it down, dial it up, what's right for my environment there?
Yeah. Okay, what was Richard, do you want to bring up the third point in the presentation back, because we do a third point. Sometimes I realize people can't see Richard. So it's just like I'm talking, I'm like, Richard, it's like they think I'm just like going delusional if there's somebody else. So the third one, forecasting.
Yeah, I don't know how surprising this is, but I think it's definitely worth talking about, because this is definitely a thing that I've heard raised a lot. And Steph, I know you did a whole reInvent talk on forecasting and anticipating costs last year and trying to kind of get everybody's brain around how to think about that. But I continue to see it be more of a priority, especially, in such a cost-conscious environment right now. So what are your thoughts here? And is there anything that you're excited about in 2024 here?
I think the forecasting one is always so hard. I'm just going to drop the YouTube link there for the forecasting chat we did at reInvent. There's some people I've spoken to who have kind of been able to get forecasting down to like a 1% variance, and it just astounds me. I think it's really tricky, just because of the variable model that is the cloud. That's not what people want to hear from me. I think is always people are like, no, tell me how to do it. How do you do it accurately? And I think that it boils down to people. What's probably happening is, and I'm assuming this from the data, is that people have moved to the cloud. Yes, we're on the cloud. Number two, we started spending money on the cloud. Number three, we started panicking about the money. And so we need to make sure we're tracking it, because a lot of people have that initial kind of, oh, we're doing stuff, we're going to be spending, we need to migrate. No one's planning for the future. And then suddenly they're getting kind of top down. We need to know what's going to happen. Why is it so different? And I think that asking that question of why do you need to forecast is going to be a big part of that. And just saying you need to forecast is such a generic, it's like saving money. It's like, why do you need to save money? Or how do you want to do this? Frank has just posted, forecasting for SAP workloads is easy. Not really. That is something I do not know about. But yeah, so I think if anyone, this is a good actual kind of a little segue, I think, as well. If anybody watching wants to come on the show or has an idea for a section, then we always want to hear from everybody. And we have a new, while I try and find it, new pulse survey. Just fill this in. You don't have to specify if you want to come on. It could just be anonymous. But if you have an idea, if you want us to talk more about forecasting, or if there's a subject that we haven't covered before that you want to talk about, or if you do want to come on and share your story, maybe you're one of these people who's like, I know how to forecast. Why are these people not struggling with forecasting? Then come on, because that would be great. So I just wanted to highlight that. And that link and all links will be in the show notes for anywhere that you're seeing this video after. But yeah, the forecasting thing, do you have a lot of conversations with customers about it?
I would say I've been having more frequently, and it's a lot of asking about how their peers do it, which I think is especially difficult for forecasting specifically, because it's kind of a curveball depending on what your workloads look like. Like, it is so variable based on your business, whether or not it's going to be an easy challenge or a hard challenge for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you are a customer and your first instinct is to say, okay, how are other customers doing this? If you talk to a business that is in a very different kind of space that you are in, or in the middle of a migration, or has a very seasonal workload, and you don't have a very seasonal workload that you can anticipate, like, that can change the calculus very significantly. So I would say, in terms of like how you can learn from others, you're a little bit more limited in the forecasting space in certain scenarios, which probably adds to some of that complexity. And at the end of the day, it's what makes it such a hard problem.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Definitely. But kind of the big advice we had at reInvent was like, have a go. I think people get analysis paralysis, as a phrase, for forecasting, because it seems a bit like, what if I'm wrong? And I'm like, what if you're wrong? Like, just have a go. Try things out, see if you're wrong, like, at least you're one step closer to knowing how to be right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a kind of a good summary of it. Okay. Did you have other slides?
There are 2 slides. There's a second
two
slide.
slides. Let's bring this back up. Here we go.
All right. These are the ones that I think were a little bit more expected. At least I was not super surprised to see them, but are still interesting for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you've seen this in kind of the work that you do, or kind of what we saw at reInvent, or just talking to the community, but the kind of ability to dive into Gen AI and AI in general is kind of varied throughout the ecosystem, right? Certain people who have a really strong use case for it, and who are kind of large enough to have the funds and the skill set to start experimenting, are really diving in, and that's impacting their bottom, like their bill, pretty significantly. Whereas others are still kind of dipping their toe in the water and haven't gotten quite to the all in on AI or Gen AI yet phase. So.
Yeah, I'm like surprised, but also not surprised that Gen AI has made its way into the state of FinOps. Like, for a fun anecdote, there was at reInvent, I was stopped by a camera crew just walking through the exhibition thing, and asked a random question that was like, what's like an exciting announcement? And I literally just said the words Gen AI, and then I was on an internal video about reInvent, and everyone was like, why are you on this video talking about Gen AI? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't know. I just said the word Gen AI, and suddenly I was like on a video. So I am surprised. I mean, don't worry, guys. We are looking into doing some more content about Gen AI, of course, because we can't be the only ones not doing it. So let us know if you think that's going to be something that's exciting and interesting. Just to go back onto the point about forecasting, a great comment here from Robert. The first step to being great at something is being dog snot terrible.
Love.
What a phrase. What a phrase. Okay, continue on, Savanna.
One last thing about Gen AI, the FinOps Foundation actually did post a pretty extensive white paper on how to start thinking about Gen AI costs and forecasting them. So highly recommend checking that out if you haven't already. It's a great resource.
Love it. Okay.
What else is in here? Okay, so the next 2 kind of go hand in hand, at least in my brain. Anomalies are still a big priority. So whenever there is a spend spike or a spend drop, just understanding what that was. But it seems like we're getting a lot better at determining those root causes really quickly. So that is great to hear. And kind of thinking to how the AWS tooling works, we have a tool called Anomaly Detection and Budgets tool. Both of those are kind of an automated mechanism to flag if there is an anomaly. But kind of going on to the next one, humans are still in the loop for most automation. I would say that matches what I've seen with anomaly detection through both of those tools, right? So the tool can detect it, but you as the user often have to kind of, as a FinOps professional, go in there, do a little bit more digging, reach out to the team, and connect the dots between the engineering staff, who are actually the ones hands on keyboard who can make the change to either resolve it or tell you it's okay, and the tool that's saying, hey, something's different.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that's how people want it to be still, right? There needs to be some decision-making aspect to stuff. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You want to make sure that there's some eyes over it, especially for optimization or changes to an environment. I'm on that brink of being like, just let the computer deal with it. And then also people don't trust the machines. So I'm sure there's a reference to some sci-fi I could make there, but I'm not sure what it is. But yeah, I think it's still interesting that the humans are still a part of it. And I wonder in the future, what will be the first to be fully automated? I'm sure there's going to be some kind of things that have already starting to change. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we'll at least have some dev and test environments on the automation train so we can start trying it out. Yeah.
Okay, and the last one, keep reducing waste. Yes.
Yeah. Key priorities, reducing waste and managing commitments. I would be shocked if that's not top of the key priorities every year, to be honest. Those are both kind of the constant thing that you have to keep an eye on and manage and do while you're in the cloud, certainly. And I will say, like, I think at this point, at least the folks that I work with have a pretty good like detection mechanism and process and rhythm going for both of those. And as we kind of saw with the fact that it seems like developer staff is leaning in a little bit more, hopefully that's something that can come together and kind of be a force multiplier in doing that cleanup.
Asking the question, do you need that, is still something that we have to say to customers all the time. And I think that it all kind of links, right? The Gen AI stuff, the forecasting, it's all coming together as the problems are still similar, but hopefully we're trying to attack it in a more serious way. And with devs being more involved, asking the question, do you need that for kind of idle resources or wasteful resources? They should be able to answer quicker. So I feel like it's similar problems to previously, but I think we're moving into a good direction of how to solve them. So there's still some good stuff to come.
Flash question for you, Steph. What's your favorite resource or service to do cleanup on?
Oh, it's always Elastic IPs.
Oh, really?
It's the smallest one. It's just because I used to, the number is like $3.36 a month for Elastic IP because it's 0.006 something, I think, for like the 6.5 for an hour, how much it costs. It's like nothing. But if you find it, it's more often than not, like literally like there's just not being used. And so the bigger the organization, the more times it happens, and it's just such an easy and Robert agrees with me, like they're the easiest ever low-hanging fruit. And it's one of those, it's more because it's a good price memory. Thanks, Frank. I think it's something like that. Someone validate me if that's the right number. It's definitely 3.36 because I'd be like, it's the price of a coffee, depending on where you get your coffee from. But it was just always such a signifier to me if I went into a customer or when I was doing it in accounts when I was at KPMG, if there were idle resources that were Elastic IPs, the most basic of thing, then it was a bit of a flag that maybe people weren't aware of what would cause idle, and also an awareness of like a problem maybe. The same thing for idle volumes. If there's like a lot of idle, like an extremely large amount of idle volumes, it's often more of a flag that something might be wrong and there might be a broken process that would be doing this. And so that's why I'd like to find them, because sometimes it opens up a bigger picture that people weren't aware of, and it's more of a story point than just a selling of a number. And it can also help you change your mindset because you're like, this is so simple, just this one little thing, and it will save some money. And people find it also quite an easy one to do. So if you delete it, they're like, oh, I saved some money. Look how easy that was. It's like a first step. What about you?
I'm going to go retro here. And again, this is like really showing my age because compute savings points have been around since 2019. But one of, I think the most like immediately satisfying things to do from my perspective is if you find somebody who has a bunch of convertible RIs that they just need to convert. And you can walk them through the process of essentially like converting that convertible RI to what they're actually using now, and then educate them on compute savings plans and kind of the other product offerings. That's always really fun to do because it's kind of like a puzzle to figure out exactly like how to take the leases that you have and map it into what it's going to be. And it can definitely make the utilization graph like look really exciting after you finish doing it. So
boom, anything that makes a big like boom 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 on your pricing
makes the graph go, I'm like, yes.
Yeah. It's the days I remember like when I got rid of the CloudTrail spend before, and it was just such a like dump, like a massive drop that was so just like satisfying. And I would go to it and just look at it and be like, I'm so happy. It's like my reverse of my bank balance. Well, my bank like opening the reverse of my bank balance.
Yeah, CloudTrail's fun too because like there are a lot of times when you can get it all the way down to 0. So it like really is just all the way off the cliff.
Yeah.
The other thing, and this is definitely something that is a lot harder to do, but has like a crazy impact, is if you can get folks on board with scaling stuff down over the weekends. That is really exciting too. And you can really see the like EC2 running hours just drop on Saturday, Sunday every weekend going forward after they set it up. It's great. Very satisfying.
I love that. Awesome. Okay, well, that is it, guys. Our first hour show is over. Thank you so much for sticking with us, for watching. We'll be back next week, same time, 8 Pacific, 11 Eastern, 4 GMT. Remembering all those is always fun. And next week, we're going to be talking about, we're actually going to have the FinOps Foundation. We're having JR come on with Rick Orks from Amazon to talk about them joining the exciting news that happened at the end of last year, as well as doing a technical deep dive as well. So if you want to learn about config optimization, make sure to tune in next week. Thank you, everyone, for commenting, chatting. As always, if you have any other questions, comments, feel free to email us. And yeah, that is it. That is all. I'm trying to get myself ready to close. Thanks, Savanna. Thanks, Frank, for coming in earlier. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.